Welcome to Scrolling to Death. I'm Nicki, and today I'm excited to be joined by Nate Webb. Hey, Nate, how are you?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. You're always fun to talk to and easy.
Oh, I appreciate that. I guess comes with the territory of being a counselor. I hope I'm easy to talk to. It's my job.
Yeah. You're a school counselor. You're a sought-after speaker and a podcast host. You focus on bullying and screen time and digital safety and all those things. But most importantly, you're a dad, and I want to start there. I know your kids are pretty young. What, 5 and under?
Yeah, 5, 3, and 1. So pretty young.
You have 3 like me.
Yep,
Exciting.
Yep. All boys. All boys.
All boys.
Yep,
Are you going to try for a girl? Are you guys good?
I mean, we want to have 4 kids. We don't care what gender the 4th one is, but we want 4 kids. Yeah. I mean, at this point, a clean sweep would be kind of cool, but you know, whichever. I mean, all boys, I definitely fulfill my medical deductible at the start of each year just because they love to just put themselves in harm's way. Whatever. It's fine. Yeah. But yeah, no, we love them.
Yeah, my son is the first one to go to the ER and get his head stapled, and my daughters are like sweet little gentle beings.
My middle child, he is the one that actually 2 years ago went and got his head stapled because he fell at grandma's house of all places and smacked his head on something. And my oldest kid is the fearful for his life and saying, "Ooh, be careful" on the playground. Yeah.
How was that stapling situation? Mine was pretty gnarly. We had to hold him down.
He was actually pretty chill about it because it was just one staple. Okay. So the guy was like, "All right, here it is." And it just kind of jumped. The actual injury itself was a lot more traumatic than the act of stapling because he just fell and he's like, "Oh, my head hurts." And I'm like, "Oh, stop whining." Then I look behind him and then blood just starts gushing out of the back of his head.
So much
I'm like,
blood.
"Oh my goodness." Head wounds, they just bleed so much.
So much. I know.
And so his little baby Yoda t-shirt's just getting drenched with his blood, and I'm freaking out. And my wife's trying to apply pressure, and my dad's like, "All right, everybody calm down. This is just a little bit of a head wound." And I'm like, "My baby's bleeding out." So yeah, it was.
I know. They tell you not to freak out. Like, it looks worse than it is, right? When it comes to a head wound. Yeah. That's our first tip for today.
Yes. Don't freak out when your child starts to bleed from the head. Yeah. Things you learn from Nate.
Go to the hospital.
Immediately.
Yeah. Okay. So you've learned a lot about online harms and the scary things that can happen with digital use and screen use. But I'm wondering what you're most worried about your kids facing as they get older and start using screens more on their own.
I am most concerned about what they're going to be shown by their peers. Right now, in the state of Utah, particularly across the nation, the average age of exposure to pornography right now is sitting about 10, 11 years old. In the state of Utah, it's sitting about 9 years old, and it usually happens on the school bus, and it usually happens on a peer's iPad or smart device of some sort. And so that's probably my biggest concern is, how early on are my kids going to be shown something inappropriate, something that they know is wrong. And am I teaching them the right things so that they can, know what it is, be able to identify it, see it, know it when they see it, and know what to do when they see it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly right, because that's the thing you have the least control over, right? Is what they may see on someone else's device.
Yeah.
So what should we tell, do you have any advice for parents, just starting there, what we should tell our kids regarding, say, porn? I think I told you in a recent conversation that my first grade son, there's a boy in his class that I've heard this kid just watches porn on his iPad at 6 years old. And so I'm worried, what is this kid going to say to my son? And should I talk to my son about it? What should I tell him about that?
Personally, I think that kids should know early on correct names of body parts, and they should know in age-appropriate ways what sex is, so that it's not a forbidden fruit, and they need to know what pornography is as well. And so that they have that knowledge, so that if and when something they do come across it in the wild, they know what it is, but also they're not going out and Googling stuff because they're curious what something is because mom and dad refuse to talk about it. If we're so scared to use the word pornography or sex or penis or any of the correct body part types in the home, it's going to create an attitude of forbidden fruit of, well, we shouldn't talk about this. And as soon as something is forbidden, kids want it so much. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I want to look at it. I want to touch it. I want to know everything there is about this thing because mom and dad says it's a no-no."
Yeah.
So take all the wonder out of it and just tell them what the heck it is.
Yeah. Big fan of that. We use words like vulva and penis in our household. You probably don't do a lot of vulva talk in your household.
No. My little boys will, like, in the grocery store, they'll be like, "Oh, you're a girl," to the checkout lady. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm a girl." And my 5-year-old will be like, "So you have a vagina?" I'm like, "Oh, yep. Sorry, moving along. Just run me over. Sorry." But
it's like there's ways at these young ages because it does come to you sooner than you think.
Much sooner. And it's getting sooner and sooner the more time goes on.
Yeah. The more kids have unrestricted access and how to learn about these things and then tell each other.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about technology use in schools, given your experience as a school counselor. And I've talked to a lot of teachers, but I haven't talked to a school counselor yet. And I'm assuming you guys hear like all the worst stuff.
Yeah.
So how many of the issues that were coming into your office were related to screen use, smartphone use, school device issues, screen time?
Like immediately, like as a direct like consequence of smartphones.
Yeah.
None. But like when they would come in, they're sad, they're depressed, they're anxious, something like that. And so the smartphone wasn't the direct reason or anything that they're talking about initially. It's, I want to get out of this class, or my boyfriend just broke up with me. They're experiencing hard emotions that they're having really hard time coping with. Some kids are like, I can't be with this teacher. I feel like I have ADHD. I need to move, do something. And so every time, though, we would be able to go through the different factors in their life, and smartphones and social media in some way, shape, or form were playing a significant role in how they felt or did not feel great about themselves in the moment.
Yep.
I had one girl talking about how, oh, my mom's so tough on me. I don't think I can take it anymore. Was talking about how she felt like she was suicidal and things like that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I was talking with this dude on Snapchat who said he was 16, but I guess he was 24, and I got in big trouble. And I'm like, yeah, because you probably could have been killed. And she's like, I know, but like my mom. And I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm like, you stupid kid. I'm not going to say that out loud to a kid, but like I can see why your mom's freaking out.
Yeah.
And so like everything and things as crazy as that, just down to like, you know, the feeling like they have ADHD and me just asking, can I look at your screen time by any chance? You have an iPhone, right? Most kids have iPhones. And so look at their screen time. And I'm like, okay, it says here on average, you're on your phone 10 hours a day. Maybe let's cut that down by just 1 hour next week.
Right.
Think you can try and be on your phone just 1 hour less next week? And without fail, every single time they come back to my office, oh my goodness, I can like focus in that crazy teacher's classroom. Like, amazing. What happens? And what's crazy to think, so many kids are going to doctors and getting drugged up when they don't need to be.
Yeah, Nate. Yep.
It's screen dependency. It's not ADHD.
So I did an interview recently with Dr. Allison Young, who has an Instagram, The Smartphone Effect.
Yes, from Canada. Yep.
Yeah. And she was like, no one has come into my office, and she sees a lot of teenagers saying it's my smartphone use. That no one complains about their phone use. They always complain about, the symptoms of the anxiety or the depression. But it always comes back to the phone use. But no one understands that a lot of it stems from the phone use, the overuse, the social media interactions.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on, too, the example of the girl that was talking to an older boy on Snapchat, and the mom probably reacted in a big way.
Oh, yeah.
Exploded.
Out of fear. Totally.
Like that emoji that the head explodes. And she probably got mad at the teenager, at her daughter.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing again and again, like parents they have to swallow that emotion and not get mad and punish the teenager for being, they might even put themselves in that situation, but how can parents better react in that situation?
I think one thing that'll help them a lot is before we get to that situation, communicate with your kid some sort of trigger warning, some sort of disclaimer, some sort of like code word that they can say and use so the parent knows the following information may be upsetting. When I talk to kids, I say no trouble bubble. It sounds really childish and it kind of is, but it works. Your kid can say to mom, dad, no trouble bubble. I got to use it. And at that point, all right, I need to suppress all emotional from my face. I can't read anything. And no matter what comes out of their mouth next, as a parent, my first response has to be, thank you for telling me. I love you so much. We're going to get through this together.
Yeah.
And if whatever they have to tell you is exceptionally, disheartening or upsetting, you can let them know this is a lot to process. And I really want to talk to you about it right now.
Right.
I need to process it so that we can talk about it and we can both talk about it in a calm manner. Can we talk about this tomorrow after I have some time to process this? And then you can go and scream into your pillow and pretend to murder whatever thing is happening in your room privately where your kid can't see it.
Right.
Because your kid's terrified of that. And so, before the situation even comes, have some sort of code word, something you can use so your kid knows to give you a little prep time of what I'm about to tell you can be upsetting.
Yeah. Because if you freak out, then the child is not going to tell you the next time that something bad happened. Right. That's the lesson there. And my husband and I actually use the same thing. Our therapist recommended it. Like I'm on channel A, he's on channel C. Like, can we meet on channel B about something? And if you have something that, and just make sure they're in the right headspace to receive some, something that may upset them.
Yeah.
I love that. So having that open relationship and being able to communicate and trust that your child is going to tell you is great. But if that's not the case, there are monitoring tools and devices that you can get alerts when there are conversations that are sexual in nature or 100%. Predatory in nature.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. There's Bark Technologies, Gab Wireless, a bunch of good monitoring stuff that can pop up. But I will say no amount of restrictions can compensate for communication.
Yeah, both. If you need both, right?
Yeah, you need both.
Yeah. Especially we're giving our kids phones so young. And what do you think about that? What do you think about parents handing their kids smartphones?
I think delay is the way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, kids are getting phones younger and younger. And oftentimes when they first get a phone, it's not because the parent wants them to be on social media. It's not because the kid wants to be on social media. Oftentimes it's because the kid is in some sort of travel sport or something, and they need to communicate with mom and dad when they get home. They need to ride home. They need to be able to call mom and dad. And so, from the ages of, some people say 6 to 12, I don't know any 6-year-old that is that competitive that they are not driving with their parents.
Or a trusted adult that has a phone.
And so I'm like, but as they get older, like 8, 9, 10, and they need a personal device, cool. Get them a dumb phone.
Yeah.
Or a Gab phone or one of the kids' safe phones. Get them a personal device that does the things you want it to do and nothing else. So many parents are giving their kids supercomputers and their little brains that are not even fully developed. Of course, they're not going to be able to make good decisions 100% of the time. We can't even make good decisions 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And we're the adults and we're going to expect them to? No. That's not going to work out.
No. And I know we all have old iPhones sitting around, but iPhone doesn't do a good job of protecting our kids. iPhones were created for adults. I could say this 1,000 times, and I still feel like people will argue with me on Instagram about how they've set it up, all the parental controls on their iPhone. No. And it's amazing. And it's not.
No, it's not.
Do you agree?
It's not. iPhones were created for adults, and the parental settings, the new ones have come out with lots of parental settings, but they're under layers of settings. It's not readily available. You have to be really tech savvy to get to them, which is really ironic because iPhone markets itself as the phone that the non-tech savvy person can use, the easy operating system. That's what they always use against Android because they feel like Android's more complicated. So they say, we're easier to use, but your parental controls are so much harder to navigate.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, no. And yes, sure, you could dumb it up as much as you want. And your kid is going to undumb it up behind your back.
Yeah. Smart it up.
Yeah. They will go behind your back, make it a smartphone again, turn it back into a dumb phone while you're not looking before you even know what's going on.
Yes. Yep. I mean, it happens all the time. And when it comes to social media use, back to that, the minimum age for most of the platforms is 13. And so I think a lot of parents are like, okay, they know what they're doing. These companies, if 13 is the age they say, then it must be 13. Do you feel like 13 is too young?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For general. I mean, I do understand, 13, 14, 15, you start becoming part of different groups that they use different apps to communicate, like Remind, and sometimes they use their club information is on Instagram, things like that. So I can understand the child wants to get those accounts to want to be able to communicate with their team. And to a certain degree, I'm okay with that. Here's the only way I'm okay with that. It's on your phone, mom and dad.
Right.
Yes, your child can have a social media account on your phone. So anytime that they get on that social media account, it is on your phone. And that way, whenever they're getting on, you're right there. You're there to supervise.
Yeah.
So if anything does come up, and things will come up, when they do come up, you'll be able to talk about it. You'll be able to go, talk to each other about it. You'll be able to turn it into a teaching opportunity instead of it turning into, secrets and things like that.
Nate, I love that. And not too many people talk about that first account that you set up for your kids. And it should be one. Don't set them up for multiple, or let them sign up for all the accounts at once. Choose one that you're going to ease them into. And then I love that. Do it on your phone, the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they're using it, it's structured or it's monitored time. And then you have your phone again in your hand. And if you want to check, which you should, especially younger ages, scroll through, but not just your kids' message, chat area.
No, go through their feed.
For you. Yeah. They're for you and their feed, because the algorithm can start, and I've heard this a lot, like the algorithm can start serving them inappropriate things pretty quickly, like one day good, next day not good.
Big time. And especially for young men. I mean, young women see inappropriate things too, but for some reason the algorithm hypersexualizes all the For You content for a lot of young men. If you say you're 13 or 14 on any of the big platforms like TikTok or Instagram, you're going to see a lot of half-naked women doing suggestive sexual dances and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the thumbnails will be people bearing their everything for everyone to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of stuff that your boys are going to potentially be seeing.
Yeah.
And so if you want to get a lay of the land, you need to check the land. It's not just their DMs that we're looking at here.
Yeah, you'd be shocked. I do a lot of exposing of For Yous of males, and males that either don't click on that stuff, or I've seen one of my friends who's around 40, he will show me his For You. It's not too bad. And he clicks on one thing and then it'll refresh. And the next For You is filled with inappropriate women.
Yep. It is crazy. I have to reset my cookies, delete my search engines so frequently just to offset my For You page on my Instagram, my Facebook and stuff, just because so often if I don't swipe past the video fast enough, then it all of a sudden becomes more and more of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't even watch this thing. I put my phone down for a second and came back to it and it was still on. I'm like, crap. It was on that video for like 30 seconds. Crap.
I know. I hear a lot of people saying the algorithm is based on what you interact with. And while I think that's one small element, I think that the bigger part is they've studied behavior of young teenage boys, and they know that young teenage boys are going to click on this material. Now,
absolutely,
there's some level of, you should let your boy kind of explore a bit, but what do you feel about that? Like, what do you feel about letting your kid have some freedom to explore that stuff, but keeping boundaries on it?
No. I mean, I get that, kids want to be able to explore. That's fine. Are you going to throw them into a jungle safari without a guide? No, you're not. They're going to get eaten alive by something that will kill them. Similarly, if they jump into the internet without a guide, they're going to be eaten alive and then be contacted by someone who probably wants to kill them. Mm-hmm. And so honestly, yes, sure. Okay. Explore. While mom and dad's sitting there.
Yeah.
While mom and dad is there to help them. Yes, explore the things, whatever. Oh, but they need privacy. No, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not the parent? Are you here to parent, or are you here to play patty cake and be a best friend? Like a lot of parents, they're like, oh, but I want them to trust me. They respect you when you parent, and they need a guide. They need a guide through this digital world. They don't need privacy. They need help.
Yeah. And devices out of the bedrooms is a big thing.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Oh, so I've been at a school about 2,000 kids. And I was curious. I pulled the population and I said, for those of you who have a smartphone in your room, which is about 75% of all of them, by the way, I said, what time do you go to bed? How late do you go to bed? On average, the answer, if they had a smartphone in their room, was 1 to 2 a.m. Now, a bunch of those kids said, my parents do put restrictions on my phone, but I just go and change my time zone to Beijing so that I can have 14 more hours on my phone. And I go to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning. There were a small number of outliers that still went to bed at a decent time, like 10 or 11. And then there was quite a few outliers who went to bed even later, like 3, 4, or 5 o'clock. And so that is equating to 3 to 4 hours of sleep at night.
Right.
And then kids are going to school trying to pay attention for 8 hours. Of course, they're not going to pay attention for 8 hours off of 4 hours of sleep. Of course, they're going to be chronically ill. I've noticed throughout the years that kids are missing more and more school because of sickness. And a lot of that sickness could be attributed to just really poor sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
Because sleep is when our brain makes connections. Sleep is when we heal. Sleep is when we're able to do these things. And if we don't get sleep, we slowly die. That's why young mom and dads age 20 years in the first 9 months of a baby's life, because we get no sleep. And we're struggling. Similarly, kids are struggling. They're sick. They can't think. They can't focus. So yeah, keep the phones out of the bedroom, if nothing else, just so they can get some sleep.
Yeah.
Not to mention that all the predatory encounters and the pornographic exposure happens from behind closed doors.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. What else in your speaking work? So you've been face to face with a lot of students. Yeah. Anything else you've learned that has shocked you?
That has shocked me. How unafraid kids are to speak to strangers. Even when you're like, it's pretty common sense now. Like you're a 16-year-old. Yeah. It's not. Right. Because I don't know why, but they have no stranger danger on the interwebs. And I think it's because they have been desensitized to it by being on social media for so long. Just as for kicks and giggles, I created a fake Snapchat account. I said I was 14, a 14-year-old boy. And I didn't even, like, when I signed up for it, I just said I was 14. I didn't put my age in my bio or anything like that. But I made my account public.
Right.
Because that's what it is by default. And within the hour, I had people sending me nude pics and asking me for nude pics. And so, like, with kids that have Snapchat, kids that have Instagram, kids that have TikTok, or any social media in general, they are being so accustomed to complete strangers asking for naked photos of them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're really desensitized to it. Because when I talk to kids, they're like, I've heard from so many kids, yeah, I got in trouble because I ended up, sexting with this like 40-year-old dude. And I'm like, what? How many? Dozens of kids that have told me this, like, yeah. And they're just kind of blowing it off. Like, yeah, I know it was bad, but I'm like, you don't, the gravity of this situation is kind of dire. And when I get my parent nights, I really have a lot of urgency when I talk about it, because I'm like, guys, this is happening more and more frequent than you guys realize.
Yeah.
And it's scary because that's not even a slippery slope. That's just jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
Going straight into talking to a stranger on the internet and exchanging naked photos with them.
Yeah. Which is called sex. Well, what's happening is the kids are getting sextorted.
Yeah, because they're going to use those photos to say, I want money. And if you'll give me money, then I'm going to sell the photos to everyone you love.
Yes. And there's a sextortion ring of hundreds of young men in Africa called the Yahoo Boys who are doing this. It's mainly coming from them, but there's lots of pockets of it. But boys are getting targeted here in Canada and US, UK, getting targeted by a young girl, cute girl, like, let's send nude images. The boy does. And then the man in Africa says, okay, no, now I'm going to share this with all of your friends and family if you don't give me however much money. If the kid pays, they still ask for more. They like keep
enough
pushing.
Is never enough. They blackmail them for years.
And they will share the photo. A lot of people are like, they won't do it, but they will. And kids are dying by suicide because of this situation.
Yeah. A lot of kids, because a lot of times the kids will refuse and say, I can't do that. I can't do that. And the guy's like, all right, well, you should just go kill yourself because I'm going to kill your family unless you do.
I know. They encourage them. I know.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And I report on this a lot, and parents have to talk to unfortunately, you have to talk to your young sons and daughters, but mostly sons, about this issue. But the talking to strangers thing is interesting. And I keep hearing stories in schools of students getting access to talk to strangers on school-issued devices. Did you have any of that happening when you were working in schools?
There is an individual, a student who had no devices except for her school Chromebook. And she has special needs. She's not so severe that she's nonverbal or anything, but she has some special needs. She's on the autism spectrum. And so a lot of those boundaries are blurred and things like that. And through her school issued device, she came into contact with a man that started to initiate sexual conversations with her that got her to believe that her mother was oppressing her And so they made plans to murder her mother.
Oh my God.
And the guy had given her coordinates to meet up with him, and he would bring the shovel and the murder weapon.
Oh my God.
And yeah, that was pretty
On
scary.
a school device.
On a school device.
How did it get caught?
Because she got scared as it got more real. And so she told her mom,
Okay.
and showed what was happening. And her mom flipped her lid, but also then got they got the police involved and whatnot. And it was a really scary ordeal for us.
Yeah. I thought you were referencing a story that I just reported on this week of a school Chromebook in Bakersfield, California, that a 14-year-old girl was, having sexual conversations with men on Discord at school. Okay. So in your case, so the school's not monitoring the conversations that are happening on the school devices?
It's not that they're not monitoring it. It's that they're monitoring the things that are happening on the things that they have the ability to monitor. And the kids are finding the loopholes to get to the blind spots of the device.
Right.
So it's not really any fault to the district. They're trying to put on the controls that they can. They're trying to make things safe as much as they think they can. But kids will always find a way to turn it something dangerous, especially when it's with the internet.
Was that a Discord example?
It was not Discord. I want to say it was Omegle. And then
before they got shut down.
Yeah, before it got shut down.
See, it's like there's so many dangerous platforms. And I made a list recently and went to my school and looked at my kids' Safari internet, tried to check for all the dangerous sites. And they have access to adult YouTube and Roblox, where you can also talk to strangers.
Yep.
But we can't just be reactionary when it comes to this stuff,
And that's why the conversations come in. The communication with your kids come in.
Yeah.
The restrictions are great, but no amount of restrictions will compensate for communication.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes communication is more productive and it's better than restrictions. Because communicating about something instead of fearing something takes the power away from that thing. You talk about pornography, it takes the power away from pornography. You talk about online predators, it takes the power away from online predators because it arms your child with the knowledge of those things. And they no longer want to go engage in those dangerous activities because they know about the dangerous things that could be waiting for them on the other side.
Yeah.
And so starting those conversations early and often so that when something comes up, not if, when something comes up, they know what to do. They're not scared. And they know to tell you when it happens.
Right.
They're like, hey, this happened. Here's what I did, but I still know that I need to tell you. Them telling you is going to boil down to how you have been reacting to all the stupid little stuff they do their entire life. If you can't keep your cool with the small stuff, why are they going to trust you with the big stuff? And they test you. They will test you, not just like test your patience like a little kid does. They'll go out and come up with hypothetical situations of friends. They'll be like, hey, did you hear that Johnny cheated on his test this week? That's pretty wild, right? Yeah. And then we'll be like, oh my gosh, I know Johnny's parents. Johnny knows better. If that were you, you'd never see the light of day again. And you're thinking, well, I want to see the light of day, so I'm never going to tell you about anything that might go down. And so we really got to be conscious of the way we react, the way we talk to our kids about these situations, because it can really determine how open they're going to be with us in the future.
Yeah. What are maybe 2 or 3 other main tips you share, especially when you go speak to, let's say, parents? My audience are parents.
Yeah. So no device in the bedroom. That's a really, really big one.
Yep.
Another big one is that devices have a bedtime, and so does the Wi-Fi. And they all should charge in a central location. The kitchen is a great place for that because there's a bajillion outlets in the kitchen for no good reason except to charge your devices.
Right.
So then you have an opportunity to go look through them, but also the device is no longer in the bedroom. Another big one that helps is having device-free zones in the home. Kids are struggling right now to cope with uncomfortable emotions because they struggle to communicate. And so they learn to communicate in the home. When we're at dinner, often known as family fight night, The kids pester each other, they whine, we snap, whatever it might be, but they're learning, problem solving things right then. They're learning conflict resolution. They're learning how to communicate. And so having different device-free zones within the home.
Yeah.
I like the living room a lot because that's where you can talk to each other. Nothing drives me more nuts when I walk into a room and people are all on their phones, laughing, looking at each other, not even saying a word. We're back to caveman grunts. And I'm like, guys, just put them away. Just talk to each other. And so just having those simple device-free zones in the house, the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, so that kids can learn how to communicate. I have a buddy here in town. He's kind of messed up, but he's hilarious. He has a teen and a tween. He has like a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. And when he goes shopping at Walmart, he will gather up everything and he'll make sure to go to a cash register with a cashier at it, with a person at it. And he will conveniently forget a dairy item, milk or something. And then he'll leave the kids there and walk to the back of the store, go get it and walk back. As a line is starting and everyone's staring at those kids, they're starting to feel those uncomfortable emotions and they're learning how to cope with them as well. And so that's the other thing I tell parents, let your kids feel some crappy emotions. Let them feel some uncomfortable emotions so they can learn how to cope. They can learn how to communicate so that they are resilient, because that's what we're wanting to build, resiliency in this tech heavy world.
And I love the device-free zones. And one thing we just implemented is my husband and I, and this is kind of the opposite of no phones in the bedroom, but we leave our phones in the bedroom when the kids are home. So we don't carry them around the house. We come and check here and there because if someone called us or we need to check an email. But I mean, during the workday, they're all at an age where they're at school. So when they're home, they just don't see our devices anymore. And we told them about it and got them excited about it. And we asked them how it's been going and how they like it. And they've given us good feedback on it. So
that's awesome.
Mirroring that behavior, right, for your kids and from a young age before they even have devices. Because if I expect them to move through the house without their device and not have it attached to them, then I can't have it attached to me.
Exactly. And there's so many wonderful things that like Amazon has that we can get. So like there's a charging station. It's like a wooden slat with a bunch of different slats and like different USB ports. It's a charging station. Just put your phones in the wooden slats and then chill there.
Yeah.
Or $20. Super simple, easy way for phones to gather in a central space. It's not that difficult to do. We just got to go and do it.
Yeah, and there's a more expensive option called ARO, A-R-O, and it's a dock as well, and the phones plug in, and they have an app. So you sign up for the app, and it like tracks how long your phone has been in there.
And you get points. And
So you can compare with your family members, which is something I'll probably do when the kids are teenagers and have their own devices.
Yeah, gamify it a little bit, make it fun.
Yeah, whatever you need to do to get it out of their hands, right?
Amen.
I know, Nate. Okay, this was awesome as usual. Where can listeners connect with you, learn more about your work?
So I'm on Instagram a lot at bulliesbe.gone, at bulliesbegone with a period in the middle of it. Mostly active on Instagram. You can email me, bullies.speaker@gmail.com. You can also message the nonprofit that I work with, Save the Kids Inc. But yeah, super active over there.
Okay. You interviewed me, so I'm going to be on that podcast, Save the Kids podcast, in April. So thank you to everybody who tuned into today's episode of Scrolling to Death. This was another incredible conversation today with Nate Webb. We talked about digital safety and screens and all the things today that parents are worried about. So hopefully you go give Nate a follow on Instagram at bulliesb.gone. And Nate, you're awesome. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks so much.